When you're watching Captain America Civil War, I remember everything about this movie. Literally everything I remember about this movie. I remember the first day I went to go watch it in theaters. I remember the hype surrounding this movie, okay? And there was a lot of hype, okay? I think the first trailer released on the Super Bowl. I'm pretty sure it released on the Super Bowl. I remember I was just watching it on my TV. I had no idea if it was a Super Bowl release or not, but I definitely think there was like a trailer on there. I don't know if they had released it prior. But anyways, there was a lot of superhero hype, not just for this movie, but because they were releasing a Batman versus Superman movie in March. And people were like, Batman versus Superman is going to be so much better than this movie. There was like a DC versus Marvel hype in a way that we hadn't really seen before. I mean, they released Man of Steel in 2013, and that was good. A lot of people said it was good. But this was like the first it was just two parallels of the same thing. And I think they did it on purpose. People at DC, I think they kind of like rushed it with Batman versus Superman because, well, one, because they were behind on like all of their comic book movies and stuff. But at the same time, I was like, oh, they're going to have the heroes fighting each other. Let's get on it first and do it better in a different way, which, they didn't, but we'll get back to that in a moment. So I remember the first trailer dropping, and they kept on releasing like little bits and pieces online, and I was a little bit like, I was really into it, but I was a little bit nervous about it because I was like, it's a little bit too much. I don't want to watch too much of the movie. I wanted to be surprised at the theater. And then they released the second trailer, and the second trailer was hype. The second trailer was everything because they revealed that Spider-Man was going to be in the movie, and that was a big deal because 2014 was Andrew Garfield's last Spider-Man movie, and there was like no Spider-Man before that, and now this is a new Spider-Man. It was just, everything was different. It was a huge deal. And I just remember being like in huge shock watching that trailer, and that was like everything. So it was a really big deal. And then it released in April. I think I went to go see it on a Thursday. So there's the Thursday like midnight release, or like, that night they release it. And then they have Friday, Saturday, all that whole weekend. And I think I went to go see it twice that weekend. I don't know if I went to go see it one time and then the next day or whatever, but I know I saw it at least twice. And there was so much speculation about the movie. Everybody had theories and ideas. And that was the time when I was like really into it. And I was deep into it because I guess last year, 2015, with the Avengers and Ant-Man, everybody wasn't like completely satisfied. I don't know. It just wasn't like, I guess they weren't just as like big deals. And they both kind of released around the same time. So Avengers Age of Ultron released in like April, May, and then June, July was like Ant-Man, or July, August, somewhere around that time. So they were pretty close together. And then you had like September, October, November, December, January, February, March, until April again for the next like MCU Marvel movie cycle. And so there was a lot of hype surrounding this. Even the reveal, because originally it was like Captain America Serpent Society, and they made it Captain America Civil War, which I thought was brilliant. That was a huge deal. But anyways, the movie itself. There are any number of things I could start this video off of, but I just want to say, before we kick this review up or talk about this movie, I just want to say I was Team Cap, and I'm still Team Cap all the way, all right? Let's just get that out of the way right now, okay? I was Team Cap. I am still Team Cap to this day. I've rewatched it, and I'm still Team Cap, okay? Now, there's going to be a bit of a debate, you know what I mean? A huge debate from a lot of people, but we'll get to that. But eventually, I just want to say, and even when I was watching the trailers or like getting ready for the movie, I was Team Cap. So, take that for what you will, all right? And I like Iron Man. I really like Iron Man. I like Tony Stark. But anyways, there was speculation in the movie that Captain America or Tony Stark might die because there were a lot of comic book comparisons. A lot of people were saying Captain America's gonna die or Tony Stark is gonna die. There was a lot of that of them dying or somebody's going to die in the movie. And then in the trailer they showed Rhodey falling, but I didn't think he was gonna die. So anyways, to start off this movie, it starts off with Bucky basically being brainwashed, doing another mission, being frozen in cryo sleep, and then woken back up. And it just goes to show you how long he's been doing this. It's not as though he's been asleep in the same way that Captain America was, frozen for 70 years. He was frozen and then brainwashed and then tortured to like do what Hydra says and then frozen. And it just was a constant repeated behavior for certain missions. So he didn't get the full, like he lived throughout all that time period, but he didn't get like the full like living experience. Does that make sense? Like he didn't get to live a life is what I'm trying to say, is that he was only out and about to kill and attack and assassinate people. He wasn't out there to do anything else or anything more. And that's true of this starting sequence. They see him wake up. They see brainwashing him using Russian words. They had like codes. They had words that they would use when they were brainwashing or torturing him, so that way they could get him to do what they needed to do. And he goes out there. He finds a target. He crashes a car and he steals whatever from them. And I have to say, the soundtrack for this movie, oh my gosh, this movie's amazing, man. It's definitely top tier of the MCU movies. It is definitely in one of my favorite MCU movies of all time. It's just, I can't, and this is complete bias, all right? It's complete bias because I was just, I was in high school. I was 16 years old when the movie came out. It was just so, it was everything. It was like the perfect time. It was just like, just that movie. And I really enjoyed it. And I also really liked Captain America, The Winter Soldier. I liked Age of Ultron and Ant-Man, but Captain America, Civil War. Crazy. Anyways, that's just the starting sequence. So we get a glimpse into what Bucky's life is like, or how he's basically been living. And then we get to the starting point in Lagos, where we see the Avengers, Cap, Scarlet Witch, Natasha, the Falcon. We see everybody like working in like it's just a small team up. It's disappointing that Hawkeye wasn't a part of it. I don't know why he wasn't a part of it, but he wasn't a part of it, which was disappointing for me. I thought we could have used a little bit more Hawkeye. But anyways, starting off scene, we basically see them going after Rumlow, who barely survived after getting, the building fell on him in Washington, D.C. We saw him running away, and Anthony Mackie jumped out the window, and then he was saved, whatever. And they're just trying to find him. Any last remnants of Hydra. So a little bit more cleanup than they're used to. And they basically break into a infectious facility for diseases and whatnot. You know what I mean? They break into a place that has like a vial of a disease, okay? And then we get an awesome action sequence. I like the Falcon. I just liked everybody's fight scenes. I feel like Cap had a great fight scene with Crossbones. I feel like Natasha got to show off her skills. We got to see Sam use his flight skills and physical combat to use. We got to see Red Wing. We got to see them work as like a team and how they function in like a small area like Lagos. And we basically got to see Cap in a vulnerable position, or like you ever have one of those moments where you're just a little too emotional and it distracts you from everything else? So like, let's say you get into a really big argument with your best friend or whoever, and they touch a really sensitive spot, and then you start crying, and then you forget like your phone in the kitchen. But now, since you had like this huge argument and you're mad at this person, it's like, oh man, I don't want to go to the kitchen to get my phone, but I'm really upset and angry. Yeah, man, it just becomes a big deal. It's like, man, I wasn't focused. I wasn't thinking. It's kind of like that. So Rumlow mentions Bucky, and that's when Cap is like, what the hell did you say? He was like, he remembered you. He knew who you were. And now I'm going to kill you. He blows himself up, and he was expecting to take Cap out with him, but luckily, Scarlet Witch saved him. Oh my gosh. No, I'm forgetting her name. Please. I'll remember her name. But anyway, Scarlet Witch saves him and sends him up into the sky. And I guess her powers couldn't hold the blast long enough, and it exploded up in the air, destroying a building and the people inside of it, including 11 Wakandans, which will be important later on. So anyways, we deal with the aftermath. And what I really like about this scene is, as soon as it happens, Cap looks up and he's like, oh my gosh. And he's like, now is the next step. We dealt with them, but the collateral damage is we got to get up there, and I need you to send fire and rescue to the south side of the building. We got to get up there. And he gets right back to work. And no time for thank yous, no time for is everybody okay, no time for it's going to be okay, let's get up there. It's just destruction, and then how can we help? Which is very realistic. And I think it was a really good point to show that something small like that, like a bombing, right, is something that they obviously don't want and wanted to avoid. But getting up there and helping people in the fire, that's really important. And there's no time for, any kind of like congratulations or thank you for saving my life. It's just about let's run up there and save as many people as we can. And then we transition to Tony Stark at a college. He is offering a September Foundation, something like that is the name of it. And he's offering money to these students so that way they can get all their projects funded and they can start changing the world. We get a glimpse at his mindset, or kind of like his little therapy experiment. He calls the technology BARF, which will be important in another future MCU movie, but he calls it BARF, and he's basically explaining that it allows it to access the functional part of your brain that like restores memories or moments and stuff, and it's basically like a huge projector, gets to live out your certain moments of your life and whatnot, and I think that's really, really cool. And he gets to the point where he tells all the students, all right, all your projects are now funded by the September Foundation, and everybody's going to be able to do what they want to do. And then he goes backstage. We learned that there's something wrong with him and Pepper Potts. And he goes backstage and he meets this woman. And at first it's a little suspicious because she doesn't press like the elevator door. He's like, you going down? And she's like, I'm right where I want to be. She pulls out her picture of her son, but it looks like she's pulling out for a gun. Anyways, she reaches for it, pulls out the picture, and she shows a picture of her son and blames Tony for Sokovia. He was in Sokovia. She's a victim. He was a victim of them being Avengers, of him creating Ultron, of the city coming up into the sky, all of it. And she blames him, and we see the guilt on his face. We see the feeling of regret, guilt, the inability to like change what he's done. There's no way for him to like backstep anything. What's he going to say? Yes, I made Ultron, but I did it so that way I could protect the world after what happened in New York, and I went into space and I have PTSD and I feel guilty about it. And I also made bombs, and I was a weapons manufacturer, so I know what it's like to feel guilt, and I was kidnapped, and like he can't go into his whole life story. And I feel like the public already knows most of it. There's just the loss, There's just the grief and the pain of a mother who lost her son, and she's not going to get him back. And the Avengers failed. They can't save everybody. And it just feels like, I don't know, it feels like there's no coming back from that. So anyways, we cut back to the Avengers facility and we see Cap is upset at the losses in Lagos. 11 Wakandans were killed, along with the people in Nigeria. They were all good people, innocent people that didn't need to be caught in the crossfire. And he's listening to it on the news, and then he also notices that Wanda Maximoff, there, I found it. Wanda is listening to it in her room as well. He's like, you need to turn it off, And he's like, you can't listen to everything that they say. And she's like, they're being specific. What authority, what jurisdiction do I have over there? And Cap is just like, you shouldn't have been the one to deal with that bomb. I should have already noticed it or clocked it in as soon as he was there. But then he said Bucky, and it's like he was 16 all over again. He was back in Brooklyn in 1941 or however long ago, 1930s, 1940s. Just lost. Doesn't know what he, just remembering his old life, his friend. And he's been chasing him. He's been trying to find him or figure out where he is. And then Cap tells her, this job, we do everything we can to save people. Sometimes that doesn't mean everybody. But if we can't find a way to live with that, then maybe next time, maybe nobody gets saved. That was a really powerful one for me. I think that was a big one in the trailer. That was a good point he made. And it just makes you think about, what heroism is all about is what happens if you can't save somebody. Oftentimes they don't. And that shouldn't be... You shouldn't give up after. It should be about saving the next person and allowing them to live their lives. So, all of the people that died in Sokovia, the woman who lost her son in Sokovia is dead. But then think about all the people on the city up there that they were able to save, that they were able to help. They were able to get off of the rock, Think about how Thor and Tony destroyed the city collapsing down on Earth. Think about the people in New York that would have died without Cap, without Iron Man, without Thor and the Hulk, Natasha and Clint. Think about all the people that would have died in the Winter Soldier if not for Cap and the Falcon. There would have been a lot of dead people, and they wouldn't have been able to do anything. But people did die, and it's something that they've had to face, and it's something that they'll continue to face, but they'll continue to put themselves on the line to save lives because people need to be saved. And that's what's important. So then, Vision comes into the door, comes in through the wall, actually, and he's kind of like, yo, what's poppin'? And then Wanda's like, Vision, why didn't you use the door? And he's like, well, the door was open, so, did it really matter? So anyways, he was like, Tony's coming by, yeah, I'll see you guys later. And he's like, oh, he also brought the Secretary of State, who is Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross? It's Thunderbolt Ross from the first Incredible Hulk movie. And he comes in, and they start talking about the Sokovia Accords. Now, the Sokovia Accords, that's the big divide. That's the thing that makes it like Team Cap versus Team Iron Man. And it's about, having the Avengers no longer be a private military organization. It's about them operating under the UN's control, by 117 countries. Now, I watched a video about like what's the difference between the accords, and there are benefits to both, and there are downsides to both. And the downsides of being Team Iron Man is the panel would have to come to a decision on where to send the Avengers and what to do, and like they would need like 1 minute to decide what they're doing or what their focus is. But then, have you ever seen government officials do something that quickly, come to a decision that quickly, figure out where to send people or what to do that quickly? You know, it's not exactly an easy thing. They could barely get on a conference call, those guys. So it's like, and the last time we saw the government in charge was a SHIELD. The last time we saw the government in charge during New York, they sent a nuke to blow it up, right? Like, they haven't exactly been a great thing. So it's kind of difficult to be like on that side. And then Team Cap, it's like, the best benefit of it is that I guess they're in control. But then all of the things that happen on them, they're not exactly, what's the right word? They're not exactly respecting the other countries or the other worlds. They just cause a big disaster, huge disaster in their places. Like when the Hulk rampaged in Africa with Avengers Age of Ultron and he had to fight Tony in the Hulk Buster suit. That was another catastrophe. That was another destruction, you know? And they have no authority to be there, right? It would be really simple if all of their problems were in America, but it's been in Sokovia and Africa and Lagos. They've been all over the place. In London with Thor, The Dark World, right? Like, it isn't just in one place over the other. It's all over the world. It's a global issue. And so it just feels like you could lean on either side, you know, rely on the UN, rely on some sort of stability, some way to, some authority, so that way they can, like, do what they need to do where they want to do it. And then back and forth. And basically Thunderbolt Ross tells them they either sign it or they retire completely. Which I think is fair, I guess. It would just make them vigilantes or outlaws. So the team discusses what to do. You know, they talk about it. And Tony kind of tells everybody, hey, you know, this is Charlie Spencer. He uses like kind of like a guilt trip or a personal angle to get everybody to agree with him or to get on his side. He says that they need to be put in check. If they can't function within boundaries, if they don't have any boundaries, they're not any different than the bad people or the bad guys or the villains that they face up against who don't have any supervision over them. And then Vision comes up with this equation of like, since Tony Stark became Tony Stark or became Iron Man, the amount of risks that this world, the amount of things that have happened in this world have gone up exponentially. You know? The world has been going nuts, been going crazy, little by little by little, since then. And because of that, they need order. They need some sort of supervision. You know, it's their strength invites challenge. Challenge incites conflict, and conflict breeds catastrophe. You know, they need oversight over them to control it just a little bit. Well, a lot of it, but you get what I'm saying. And then Tony starts talking about Charlie Spencer and saying, hey, we need this. And Cap is like, no, we can't be a part of this. We have to take responsibility for the things that we do. Yes, Charlie Spencer died on our watch because of us, but it's also because of us other people lived. It's because of us other people were able to see tomorrow, get to be with their families. And signing over authority to the UN doesn't change any of that. all it does is just shift the blame onto them, their choices. And he makes the argument that, like, what if they tell us to go somewhere we don't want to go, we don't think we should go? And what if there's somewhere we need to go or want to go to save the world, and they don't let us? Being in their control, in their pocket, doesn't give us the freedom to choose. And then Tony comes over there and he's like, well, I know what that's like. I made weapons and I saw what they were capable in the wrong hands. And so I stopped it. I stopped manufacturing. I became an energy company. I focused on doing good in the world. And Cap is like, well, you chose that. If we sign this, we surrender our right to choose. And we can't have that. The safest hands are still our own. Basically just reciting the whole movie. But my point is that scene is so important, that discussion, that argument. You're able to understand one or the other. And Tony's basically saying, like, if we don't do this, if we don't sign now, they'll sign us later. You know, they'll call us criminals. They're going to call us vigilantes and whatnot. We have to sign this now while we're in control, while they're giving us the choice to sign it. And Wanda's basically like, you're saying they'll come for me, because if she doesn't sign it, she'll basically be like a criminal because she's in America, she's not a U.S. citizen and all that stuff. But anyways, then Cap gets the message that Peggy has died. He goes to her funeral. It's sad. And I thought it was always so funny because it was like, he could obviously lift that casket all on his own. I was watching it, I was like, he should carry that casket all by himself. I was like, that was crazy. But it was sad to see Peggy die. And then Sharon Carter goes up and she says a line from the comics, which is about, like, standing, even when the whole world is telling you to do something different, it's your job to stand there and say no. To plant yourself like a tree, stand there and say no. You move. That was a good one. And then the next day, I think, was oh, hold on, let me back up. And then Natasha chose to sign the Accords. She actually went on Tony's side. And it was interesting why she chose that side, considering she was so vocal in Captain America, the Winter Soldier. But I feel like she chose it because she did reveal all of her secrets out into the world. And they did blow up a building in Lagos. And Sokovia fell, right? The Avengers need to be united together. And as long as they are able to keep their public image of everybody's able to, like, accept and see the Avengers being a united force, being together, as opposed to being apart. So anyways, they're at the funeral, and then the next day they're at the UN to get the Accord signed. And so Cap isn't signing. Wanda is not signing. Clint's not signing. But Rhodey, Tony, I think Vision, they're signing. And so at the UN signing, we see Black Panther, played by the Chadwick Boseman, baby. Oh my gosh. Let me just tell you, the Russo brothers knew what they were doing with each character they were bringing in. It was so well done, well crafted. They did a great job bringing in all the extra characters into this movie. I mean it. They did a fantastic job of it. So we see Chadwick Boseman because the Wakandans were killed, and we already had a sneak peek that Wakanda was a part of this world when they were talking about vibranium in Avengers Age of Ultron. So essentially, we see Chadwick Boseman be supportive of the Accords. He's like, I believe in the Accords. But he also kind of believes that things should be a little bit more private, a little bit more one-on-one. You know what I'm saying? But anyways, we get to see he's there along with his father, King T'Chaka. And then finally, The UN gets bombed, killing King T'Chaka. And T'Challa is now the new king of Wakanda. He takes his mantle as the king, and he's also the Black Panther, which we'll see later. I'll talk about later on. But man, Chadwick Boseman was the best actor to play that character. So incredible to witness and to see that a man like that was so dedicated to the character, so into playing that character. It means everything. And they did him so much justice in this movies and in the movies that he will be in soon. But anyways, Chadwick is now T'Challa is now on the hunt for who killed his father. And the news is claiming it's Bucky Barnes, the Winter Soldier. But nobody's seen him. Nobody knows where he is, why he would blow up the UN. But that's what they're claiming. So he says, I'm going to kill him because he killed his father. Very personal. So then we see Cap and Sam Wilson. They know, and they're like, oh my gosh, we got to find this guy. And Cap wants to bring Bucky in because it's Bucky. That's the whole thing. He's doing it because it's his best friend, because they know each other, because they've been through it together. They fought in the war together, and he saved him from the river last time they saw each other, so why not? And he also says he's the least likely to die trying, but it's also because it's personal for him. So anyways, we get Captain finding where Bucky is. We kind of get a glimpse at what Bucky's life is like in Bucharest, but it's nothing too special, nothing too crazy. He's just living a peaceful life. He's obviously being framed for the murder, but you know what I mean. So anyways, Cap finds Bucky, and this is when things start to go a little bit crazy, because now everybody's after Bucky. And Cap gets to him first, and he's like, all right, we gotta get you out of here. We gotta save you, okay? Everybody's coming for you. And Bucky's basically saying, well, I didn't do that. I didn't blow up the UN. That's not me. And Cap is just basically like, you know who I am, don't you? And Bucky's like, no, I don't. And Cap is like, you're lying. That's Cap. You know who I am. And then the greatest, this is such a great chase scene. Well, it starts off as just like an action scene, but they're punching their way out. They're fighting. So everybody's coming for Bucky. Cap is trying to get him out of there alive. So they have to face the soldiers or whoever is coming for him. And it's an incredible fight sequence. That whole being in the apartment building, fighting in the stairway, going down, coming up, jumping, falling, running. So then Bucky runs out of the building, right? He jumps to the next one, like 100 feet below him. And then he starts running, and that's when Black Panther shows up, trying to assassinate him. And they start fighting. Cap goes after them. And that's where the chase sequence begins. And I love this chase sequence because it started in the building. It started in his apartment. Then it moved into the hallway. Then he jumped from the staircase. Then he jumped onto another building. Then he started fighting Black Panther. Then he runs into the street and they start running past each other. They start running past cars. It's so cool to show off their speed, how fast they can really run, all of them. Cap gives chase towards them. We see Sam flying after them. It's so cool. That whole chase sequence, it was just awesome to see, and get to see them fight each other, get to see them, that motorcycle sequence where he grabs the motorcycle and then he turns around and flips it and then he sits and he starts driving off was awesome. And then finally when they get caught, Bucky is driving on his motorcycle. Black Panther comes through and pops the tire or slashes the tire with his claws. They both go gliding, or they both are on the street now. Black Panther's about to kill Bucky. Cap saves him. And then they all get stopped by the police. They get stopped by Rhodey. And everybody finds out that King T'Challa is Black Panther. And that is such a tense moment. Such an action-packed moment. And everybody gets arrested. And Cap is a criminal now. And we'll have to see what happens next. So then we see Wanda and Vision have a scene together. It's just basically showing the position Wanda is in right now. She isn't in the same comforting home that she used to be in. She's kind of been put into prison, but she's, stuck in the house, in the Avengers compound. She's not allowed to leave because, well, she didn't sign the Accords. If she had signed the Accords, she would have been like she basically would have been like under a working visa. Something like that. Like she would have gotten some sort of green card to work for the UN, and she would be able to live at the Avengers compound. But because she didn't sign, then she's basically like a vigilante, or she's just like another whoever, and she's not exactly allowed to live in the US. So they're in a difficult place. And Vision's just basically like, people are afraid of you, of what you can do. And I want them to not feel that. So just follow the rules for now. And they have a very nice and sweet moment. And then we get back. Oh, no. And then I think afterwards we get a look at Zemo. And I have to say, Zemo is a really interesting guy. I like him because he's so calculating. He has experience and he has patience. And with those two things, he's able to do anything. And I think that's really important. I think it's a great example of how even a regular man, or it doesn't have to be superpowered evil people, you know what I mean, to like be a huge threat. It can be just a man like him, somebody with military training and experience and the ability to do anything, but with patience and time and, the right time and the right place. And he has it. He can do it. And I like that. So basically, he finds Bucky's book, which is with all the code words he needs to like activate him from when he was being tortured by Hydra. So we see that he gets the book. Now we cut back to Bucky's situation after being detained by the CIA. We get to meet Martin Freeman's character, who's also great. And we just basically go into lockdown mode. Bucky gets taken away. Cap and Sam Wilson are taken into an office instead of a cell. Their gear gets taken, the Captain America shield. And basically everybody's just kind of like under arrest, so to speak. So now we get to a little bit where we see... Well, before that, they were driving over to, like, they were arrested and they were driving over. And they're basically talking back and forth amongst each other with Black Panther and Captain America. They're saying, like, your suit is vibranium? And he's like, yes, my suit is vibranium. The Black Panther has been the protector of Wakanda for generations. And now that your friend killed my dad, I'm the king. How long do you think you can keep Bucky safe from me? Then they show up at the prison, They show up at the office or whatever. And now comes the tricky part, okay? They have to get they have to get Captain America to sign, so that way he's no longer a criminal. He won't be thrown into prison. So Tony's like, I need you to sign the Sokovia Accords, so that way we can make everything that you've done these last 24 hours legit, okay? You'll be under the UN supervision, and if you sign this, we'll all be okay. You know, you won't go to prison. Bucky will be sent to an American psych ward, and everybody will be fine. But you have to sign it. And Cap is like, it's possible. It's possible for me to sign it. And then Tony says something that I really like is like, once they put out the PR fire, the documents can be amended, you know, to fit whatever Cap wants. And then he has to open his big mouth and tell him that Wanda's under protection at the Avengers facility. And Cap sees it a different way. He says it's internment. She's just a kid with these abilities. She's not somebody to lock away. It shouldn't be a prison. You know, just for, and that's basically because she disagrees with them. You know, but because she has those powers, they have to lock her down and keep her away from everybody. So it's like, that's not really fair. You know, so that's the wrong way to look at it. And he doesn't end up signing, and they come to a disagreement. And then we see Zemo practicing the words. We see Zemo basically learning the commands. And we see that he's kind of having stuff in the works, you know what I mean? And then finally, we get that Bucky needs to be under psychological evaluation. And so what happens next is we see Zemo pretending to be the psychiatrist, the doctor, who's supposed to be helping out Bucky, I mean. And that's when he starts saying the words and starts activating Bucky to attack and do whatever he wants. And now he starts going crazy. He goes on a rampage. He starts attacking everybody. He attacks Sam. He attacks Cap. We see Captain and Zemo have a confrontation about wanting an empire to fall. We see Sam chase after Zemo. We see Cap versus Winter Soldier. He gets snacked down into an elevator. Then we see Bucky versus Tony without his suit. We see him versus Natasha. We see him against Sharon Carter, who is Peggy's niece. We see them all fight. And then we see Black Panther versus Bucky. They get into a fight. And that was really, really cool. And then it kind of just, it's one of those weird things in those movies where it's like, we need him to escape, but we also want Black Panther to win. Does that make sense? So Black Panther beat up Bucky, but then Bucky just disappeared when there was like no excusable way for him to disappear. He just is gone. But anyways, that's not the important part. Now Bucky's trying to escape on the helicopter, and Captain gets up to the top of the roof, and he pulls the helicopter. He keeps the helicopter close to the ground. And in an awesome display of strength, he's like struggling to like keep Bucky on the ground. And then they get into a last little like choke out. Bucky chokes him, and then they fall into the river. Bucky smashes his head in on the glass, and then they swim away and they find a place to hide. So now Cap, Bucky, and Sam are in this little facility, in this little garage basement type area. And that was the Ant-Man post-credit scene. I didn't talk about that. Or maybe I did. It was like a little Civil War thing, okay? But this is it. We found it. This was the post-credit scene, which I thought was really cool, how it connected into it. And we see Bucky's arm kind of down on one of those machines that like compresses stuff, and they have him trapped there. And Bucky convinces everybody, or at least Cap, that he's back to normal, or he's okay now. And Captain's like, why did he do all of this? He did everything. He set you up. He blew up everybody in Vienna. He gave you the code words and the commands to like attack us and to fight everybody. Why did he do that? And Bucky was like, he wanted to know where I was in Siberia, where I was kept there. Why? Because I'm not the only Winter Soldier. Dude, Sebastian Stan's delivery was something magnificent. Okay, that was a great piece of work. So then it shows us Bucky attacking whoever, crashing a car, and then stealing the serum, the super soldier serum, and then we see what Hydra was using it for. They were creating more Winter Soldiers like Bucky. And so we see like these Hydra people become Winter Soldiers, and they're even crazier than Bucky is, even stronger. We see them actually fight and beat him, you know? So then they have the impression that Zemo is going to wake all of them up and attack the world. And that's the new threat that they have to face. Five more super soldiers to fight, to kill, to deal with. They're basically all just going to go crazy on the world. So then they come to the conclusion that they can't ask Tony Stark for help. They can't ask anybody for help because of the Sokovia Accords they just signed. So if they do anything related to that, they'll be arrested. So they need to make the decision now to go help, to go fight them, to stop Zemo. But then Sam has a brilliant idea. He says, I know a guy who can help us. And he's basically referring to Ant-Man, but he's like, I know somebody who can help us out. I know a guy. So that was cool. That was a nice little Ant-Man moment. But anyways, they need to, now we cut to Tony and Natasha, and they're dealing with the aftermath of Bucky's attack and basically looking at, all right, what's next? We need to bring him in. And Thunderbolt Ross is like, you guys need to bring him in. We're going to get to work on this. And Tony's like, it has to be us. Give us 72 hours. We'll bring him in. And I hate it whenever they do it like, you have 36 hours. It's like, what, dude? You gave him, just give him the 72 hours. Like, he just guaranteed you he was going to get them. What does it matter if it doesn't happen within like 2 days? Like less than 2 days, right? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. So anyways, Natasha comes up with the idea to go get Black Panther to help them out, to stop Cap and arrest everybody. And then Tony has another idea. And then, boom, we get Spider-Man. We meet Spider-Man. We meet Peter Parker. We meet the MCU's Spider-Man, played by Tom Holland. And I wasn't, like, huge on the idea, but, you know, after the movie, I was so impressed. I think Tom Holland is great in the character in this movie and the other movies. He's fantastic. I think he does an amazing job with the character. I also think that the dialogue that he has with Tony Stark in this scene is so true to the character, and it's so refreshing because it's so different from everybody else that we know. So we already know that Uncle Ben is dead, right? We already know his whole origin. We don't need to see him get bit by the spider. We don't need to see him, you know, we don't need that whole backstory. And that's the cool thing, is that, like, he's only been Spider-Man for a few months and quote-unquote Spider-Man, okay? Just want to put that in perspective. He's only been Spider-Man for a few months. That doesn't mean he hasn't, you know, he could have been bitten for a lot longer ago. So, like, he could have been bitten 8 months ago, and then 2 months later, and then 6 months pass and he's Spider-Man, right? Like, publicly Spider-Man, I guess I should say. But anyways, man, they have such a great dialogue. And he talks about being a hero, dealing with guilt, dealing with his superpowers, and what he can do. I think it's awesome that they have that conversation. And a little behind the scenes is that, like, when they were making the movie, Tom Holland was kind of like, he was kind of in that moment, or in that position of, like, he just got cast as the character and he needed to follow the rules or whatever the directors were doing. And they basically cut out all of his dialogue in return for, like, something else. And the Russo said that the movies were a bit too long or whatever. But when he was auditioning for Spider-Man, they had all of that script, all of that dialogue between everything we see in the movie, like them talking to each other. That was in the script originally when he auditioned. But then on the day of, they were basically like, we're going to take all that out because the movie is way too long. And then Robert Downey Jr. is like, what happened to all the kids' lines? What happened to Tom Holland's? What happened to all of his lines? And they were like, the movie's too long. It was like, well, let's just use it. You can cut it if you don't really need it, but let's just use it. And then they ended up using all of it. I thought that was really cool. So anyways, Tony recruits Spider-Man to help them out in Germany for a little bit, gets him a passport and buys his way to the next stop, got him a new suit and everything. Really cool. And then Natasha recruits Black Panther and they go to Germany or wherever they're going to be. Captain America, Bucky, and Sam meet up with Sharon Carter, who stole all of their gear, who stole the shield, stole the Falcon suit. They meet Ant-Man, and they meet Wanda and Clint. Which, by the way, Clint had to go get Wanda. I forgot about that part. He had to fight Vision, which he couldn't beat. Wanda had to fight... What is it? Wanda had to fight Vision to get out of the Avengers facility. And it's like, in order to make amends with the world, in order to make amends with the things that she's done, you can't just be stuck in the same place. You have to get out there and do something, be a part of the world. And that's what Clint was telling her, is like, if you want to make amends with people and with what's going on in the world, you don't just sit still. You get off your ass and you move. And that's what happened. She joins Team Cap, and now it's time to suit up. And then what comes next is the airport fight. Oh my gosh. I could go on and on and on about the fight, but we're running a bit long. But anyways, Ant-Man is a part of the team. That was really funny. I think Paul Rudd is fantastic in the movie. Definitely a highlight of the movie, a breath of fresh air, of fun. It was really cool. Him and Tom Holland, they were both really fun in the fight. Man, that airport fight was really everything. That's the moment everybody wanted to be a part of. So anyways, we get to the airport fight and we immediately see the confrontation of Captain versus everybody. Cap and Iron Man, Cap and Black Panther, Cap and Black Widow, Cap and Spider-Man. Everybody's just like surrounding him. And then it's time for the next step. Escaping, getting away from everyone. And that's when Ant-Man comes into play, kicks Spider-Man, gets his shield back, and it's off to the fight. Iron Man goes to get Wanda. Clint and Iron Man have a little bit of a talk to each other. And so they basically just start fighting. And I think there were so many great moments. I won't be able to name them all, but I like the bit where Spider-Man is fighting Bucky and the Falcon, where he meets him and then there's like, Bucky's like, what the hell is that? And then Sam is like, everybody's got a gimmick now. That was really funny. I like when Spider-Man catches the Winter Soldier's arm and he's like, dude, you got a metal arm? That is awesome. You know what I mean? And he starts going, you have the right to remain silent. I thought that was really funny. Webbing them up, swinging throughout the airport, all of that stuff was just so cool to see Spider-Man in that way. We got to see Ant-Man shrink and then enlarge and fight. We got to see Cap versus Black Panther. We got to see Cap versus Rhodey. All of it. It just brings in so many elements from all of the other movies that is so fun and so unique and changes everything, right? Like, Black Panther versus Captain America isn't really... It's not all that flashy. But then Ant-Man versus Black Widow, where he shrinks, and then she zaps him with, like, her thing, and then Spider-Man swinging throughout the airport against the Winter Soldier and Sam, right? The Winter Soldier, like, throws a sign at Spider-Man, and then he swings it back, and he's like, hey, buddy, I think you lost this. Boom. Funny moment. He webs them up. Spider-Man gets taken outside, da-da-da-da-da. Just a great, great piece of moments. And then they start fighting each other some more. And it just ends up becoming this big brawl at the end of the day. And now there needs to be a moment for Cap and Bucky, for basically everybody to get out and get to the Quinjet and fly away. And Sam comes up with the idea, well, we're not all getting out of this. It has to be you and Bucky to get out. You have to get out over there and fight. This isn't the real fight. And so they need a distraction, something big. And that's when Ant-Man, Paul Rudd, man, great. He's just so awesome in what he does. Like, he's only in the movie for a little bit, but what he does with that time is so explosive. It's so dynamic. It's so fun. He's just, like, very needed. And I remember watching this in the movie for the first time. And, dude, it was the best feeling watching him go from little Ant-Man to Giant Man. That's such a great name too, in my opinion. Ant-Man, he shrinks, he becomes like the size of an ant, and then he goes big into Giant Man. I thought that was cool. Giant Man. And we see like Peter Parker, Spider-Man going like, oh my gosh, like he's freaking out. Everybody else is freaking out. I was freaking out. I literally felt like Peter Parker in that scene. He was like, oh, what? And everybody was going crazy. And then Tony Stark was like, all right, is anybody on our team hiding any shocking and fantastic abilities? So Paul Rudd turned into Giant Man and got everybody to like, he could basically take on everybody there. He could stop Rhodey. He could stop Iron Man. He could stop Natasha. He could stop Black Panther. And Vision is the only one that's like really strong enough to like fight him. That and Spider-Man's webs. But essentially, they get into the fight, they get into the brawl, and Cap and Bucky are about to reach the Quinjet, and they run into Natasha. And that's when it's like, I have to go. And Natasha's like, all right, I'm going to help you out. She shocks Black Panther, which I think was really cool. If his whole suit is made out of metal, then I guess electricity would be like a huge weakness. You know what I mean? Like, getting shocked like that, that's such a... If you put an electric current into the metal, then yeah, he would get shocked. I would imagine that's like a huge downside. If you have like... So I guess like if Thor shocked him with lightning, he would be fried. But because she's just like using little jolts, it's like more of like a intense shock. So anyways, Cap and Bucky escape on the Quinjet. Black Panther can't stop them. Natasha goes like, I told you I'd help you find them, not catch them. There's a difference. And then it's everybody who can fly goes after them. So Iron Man's going after them. Rhodey's going after them. Sam is going after them. So they're all up in the sky. They're all flying. And Rhodey tells Vision, yo, I got the Falcon behind me. I need you to turn off his pack or like blast off his pack so that way he can just glide down. You know what I mean? He won't be able to fly if you hit his jetpack, but his wings will allow him to glide back down to safety, or at least have his parachute. Vision blasts it, and he hits Rhodey instead by accident, not paying attention, being distracted by Wanda and his feelings for her. And so Rhodey, with no arc reactor, starts falling out of the sky. And oh my gosh, that was heavy. That was a tough hit down on the ground. And I just think Robert Downey Jr. did a great job of like being in that moment, of being like so scared and so like concerned. He's like, whoa, I got to go after him. I got to save him. And then Sam is also going after him to help, but neither one of them are fast enough to catch him. He hits the ground, but he's still alive. And then Sam is like, I'm sorry. Iron Man blasts him. And then Cap and Bucky get away. And they have like a little bit of a talk of like, you know, Bucky's like, I don't know if I'm worth all of this. And Cap is just like, you would do it for me, you know? You didn't do all of those bad things. Somebody else did, and now he's about to do something even worse. We have to stop him. And then Bucky's like, but I still did those things. Even though he wasn't in his right mind, he's still the bad guy. He still did do all of those horrible things, whether he wanted to or not. You know, he didn't want to. let's just put it, he didn't want to do any of those things, but he was being brainwashed and controlled by Hydra, but he still is the man that did them. So anyways, we get a glimpse at what Zemo's doing, going to Siberia. We get him entering the facility that Bucky was in. And we kind of get an idea of who he is, or some added layers to him. And then basically we get to see the aftermath of what Bucky and Cap has done. Rhodey has paralysis on his lower legs, some form of paralysis. Vision became distracted, which he didn't think was possible, but it is. We see Tony confront Natasha about what she did. And then we see everybody else locked up and put away. And then we see Tony learn that the doctor isn't actually the doctor that they were needed, that was hired to be there. He killed the actual doctor and took his place. And then we see him go to the raft, and he sees everybody locked up in prison. And there's a great exchange between Clint and Tony Stark. He starts clapping his hands and he goes, "The futurist, gentlemen, the futurist." I really like that moment where it's like Tony walks in, he's like, immediately he's like, "Oh man, like it sucks." He doesn't like it. He doesn't like them being all locked up. But then as soon as Clint starts clapping, you see his face completely change, and he's just like, "Oh boy, here we go." And then they argue a little bit. And then Tony talks to Sam, and Sam, being the good man that he is, goes like, "How's Rhodey?" He's like, "He's fine. Well, he's okay for now. He's at the hospital. We're looking at some sort of form of paralysis. But something a little bit more interesting. Take a look at this." And then he shows him that he knows it was the bad guy and da-da-da-da-da. And he's like, "He's going to need some help. Tell me where he is." And Sam is like, "Okay, but you go there by yourself and you go as a friend." And he's like, "I can do that." Little does he know, everything's about to change. So then Thunderbolt Ross is basically like, "Did he tell you where Rogers is going, where he is?" And he's like, "No, but call me if you need anything. I'll put you on hold. I like to watch the line blink." I thought that was funny. And so essentially we see Tony fly off in the helicopter, but then he escapes in his Iron Man suit with Black Panther behind him in a Quinjet, or in one of his jets, whatever, Wakandan flight. I don't know. It's just in another plane. All right, he's after him. So then we see Bucky and Cap reminisce about the good old days. I like the way that Bucky says hot dogs. I don't know why. Sebastian Stan, he was like, "Was that the day we used our train money to buy hot dogs?" I don't know. I don't know why. I just like the way he said hot dogs. And they're just talking about the days, the old days, you know what I mean? A little friend moment. Another extra bonding moment before they go fight 5 other Winter Soldiers. So they enter the facility, Bucky's old facility, the Hydra compound, where Tony Stark meets them. And then he's basically like, "I believe you guys now. I was wrong. I'm here to help, and we're going to fight together, okay? But don't tell Thunderbolt Ross, or don't tell anybody, because then I might have to arrest myself, and that might be bad." So anyways, now they're coming up on Zemo, and Black Panther is behind them as well. And basically Zemo killed all the other 5 Winter Soldiers. So he's basically not trying to unleash the Winter Soldiers. He's trying to fight. He's trying to pit the Avengers against each other. And he studied, he focused, and he reveals his backstory. He's like, "I lost everyone in Sokovia because of what you guys did what you, the Avengers, did. And he basically reveals that he killed everybody in Vienna, including T'Challa's father, King T'Chaka. He unleashed Bucky so that everybody would hate him, turn against him. That he now has the last thing he needs to pit them against one another. And he shows Mission Report, December 16th, 1991. And he basically shows Iron Man's parents being killed by the Winter Soldier, by Bucky, which was the first scene that we saw, and how he took the super soldier serum from them. And this is like the first time he's ever gotten any kind of closure or any kind of like idea of what really happened. It wasn't just a car accident. They lived. And then they were subsequently killed by Bucky, who was forced to kill them, by the way. And in the moment, he wants to kill Bucky. And then he gives Captain America a look. He gives Steve Rogers that look of like, did you know that he did this? And he was like, I didn't know it was him. And then Steve, knowing, and then Tony, knowing Steve is a bad liar, he's just like, don't lie to me. Did you know? And Steve, just like, yeah, I knew. And that betrayal, that shock, that look in his eye of like, he knew and he didn't say a word. He didn't say anything. He didn't mention it. It wasn't in the Hydra archives, but he knew, he found out from that file in Kiev, or when that Arnim Zola showed him and the Winter Soldier, he knew and he didn't say anything. That betrayal, that shock, that look in his eye of like, feeling alone and feeling like, I'm going to cool off. But then now it's time to fight. And then he hits Cap away and he starts going for Bucky. And then the new fight begins. And then Zemo gets away. And now they're fighting each other. And it's interesting because, you know, Iron Man isn't trying to kill Cap. He's trying to kill Bucky. So he first traps Cap by his legs. He like hits him with the like, I don't know, some sort of like a metal box around his legs that trap him. And that's another great example is like when Cap was fighting Spider-Man, he told Spider-Man to go for Cap's legs. And another great exchange between those two. Captain America and Spider-Man had a great exchange at the airport fight. I thought it was so short and sweet, but it was beautiful. I wish I had more scenes like that between Captain America and Spider-Man where they got to interact and be buddy together. I like the part where he goes like, you got heart, kid. Where are you from? And then Spider-Man's like, Queens? And then he gives him a smile. He's like, Brooklyn. And then he runs away. That was a great scene. But anyways, calling back to that, he told Spider-Man to go for Cap's legs. And then what does he do? He locks his legs up. So I thought that was a cool little nod. Anyways, they're fighting each other. And Cap gets in his way. And he's like, it wasn't him, Tony. Hydra had control of his mind. And Tony's just like, move, get out of the way. And he stops him. He catches his leg. And then he starts hitting the jet boot. And then they start fighting some more and more and more. Bucky's trying to escape, and then Tony's like, I'm going to eyeball it, blasts a missile up and traps Bucky inside of the compound still. And then he gets him by the throat, and he's like, do you even remember them? And then Bucky's like, I remember all of them. And then they keep on fighting. Steve now has to fight Iron Man, has to get him to stop trying to kill Bucky. And then they get down to the ground level. And he's still trying to reason with him. It's like, killing Bucky's not going to bring your parents back. You know, this isn't going to change what happened. It's not going to give you back the years of grief, the years of depression, the sadness, the no closure. Killing Bucky is not going to change anything. And Tony's like, I don't care. he killed my mom. So they get into it, boom, boom. And I definitely think they upgraded Captain America. They made him like strong enough to face Iron Man. I mean, he was always strong enough to face Iron Man, but it's like compared to when the first Avengers came out and where they are now with it, like compare this fight to Iron Man versus Thor. Thor was able to like crush and make a dent in his armor, but then Iron Man was also able to like blast and push and fight against Thor. So it just kind of goes to show you how much stronger, I guess, Cap has gotten, or I guess is maybe just the scenario. But anyways, my point being, Cap is like the strongest we've seen him yet. And we see Cap and Iron Man going hand to hand, boom, boom. And then Bucky steps in, hits him in the back with the shield, and now it's 2-on-1. And everybody wants to call them jumping, you know what I'm saying? But like, he's literally a man in a suit with missiles and armors and arc reactors and blasts, like, you know what I mean? And they're just two guys with a shield, you know, and a metal arm, and they're just warriors, you know what I mean? He's a metal suit of armor, right? Like, I don't know. I feel like it's a valid 2-on-1. I don't think, I definitely don't think it's like cheating, but everybody wants to call it a jumping. But anyways, we see him blast Steve away, and then Bucky starts taking him on, and he's going for the arc reactor, but then Tony blasts it with his chest arc reactor, and he destroys his arm completely. And then now they get the signature Civil War pose where it's the shield and the arc reactor blast going up against it. I thought that was a really cool comic nod. That was really cool. We saw Zemo and T'Challa confront and face each other, understanding Zemo's motivations to kill them, knowing he wasn't strong enough to kill them, but tearing them apart from the inside was important. And he did it. And T'Challa's basically like, vengeance has consumed you. It's consuming Tony right now. And he's done letting it consume him. And I thought that was really cool. That was really mature. Great show of who T'Challa is and who he wants to be as king, as future king of Wakanda, you know? So now, we see T'Challa hold him, you know what I mean? Zemo tries to kill himself, but he stops him and he's going away, gets some justice. And now we see that Tony is struggling to face Cap hand to hand, 1-on-1. And so he analyzes his fight pattern, and then now it's time to kick his ass. And they start fighting, starts beating him up to a pulp. And they get that great moment, that great scene where it's like dialogue, where it's like, he's my friend. He's looking up to him and he says, so was I. Boom, keeps on fighting. And at the last minute, Bucky is trying to help him. No. Yes, he beats him up. He goes, so was I. Beats him up, tosses him, throws him. He goes, stay down. Final warning. Cap gets up and he says, I can do this all day. And then Bucky tries to help. He gets kicked in the face. And then Cap lifts him up into the air, lands him down on his neck, beats him with the Iron Man, with the Cap shield. And then he rips off his face, his Iron Man mask. And then, boom, right into the arc reactor and destroys the suit's energy source. That's such a powerful moment because he just basically he kills the Iron Man suit, but Tony Stark is still there underneath. And it's just a great example of He ended the fight, but he didn't end the fight. You know what I mean? He didn't kill him. And you only get that great moment when you understand that Tony has already removed, like, the arc reactor isn't a factor of him being alive or dead anymore. It's just merely there to power the suit, you know, so to speak. Well, that's not true. But it's like, if you destroy the arc reactor, it's just basically destroying the suit's energy source. It doesn't mean he's killed. It doesn't mean he's killed Tony underneath it. But anyways, Cap ended the fight, and now he's getting up and leaving. And Tony's still upset, still angry, and you know, he should be. He goes, "That shield doesn't belong to you. My father made it." And so Cap leaves the shield behind and walks away with Bucky. And that's the end of it. And then the aftermath being Zemo getting locked away and him saying that what he did didn't really succeed, but it did. He did succeed in his goal. We see Rhodey and Tony working on his legs, trying to get into physical therapy, walking again. We see Tony has made him some sort of like a thing for his legs to walk again. And then we get a Stan Lee cameo with Tony Stank as the FedEx employee. That was hilarious. Great timing by Stan Lee. We get a phone and a letter from Steve talking to Tony, saying, basically apologizing and saying that, like, you know, he was only doing it for himself. He was doing it selfishly. He wasn't doing it to be honest or be completely truthful to Tony about what had happened to his parents. He was doing it because he thought, or he was holding back, or he thought he was kind of like sparing him, but he was really just trying to make himself feel better about his friend, somebody that he cares about. But if he ever needs him, he knows he can call him anytime he needs him. And then he breaks everybody out of the Raft prison, and now he's a wanted vigilante, which I think is really cool. And then I think we get I don't know if we get a mid-credit scene. I'm trying to think. Did we get a mid-credit scene? I don't think so. Let me think. No, I don't think we do. I think we get like a post-credit scene with Spider-Man, with Peter Parker talking about getting beat up by Steve in Brooklyn. Is there anything else after that? Not that I can recall. I think that's it. Yeah, nothing else. But anyways, I wanted to finally talk about Team Cap and Team Iron Man. And people are acting like if you're Team Cap, you don't understand, or like you can't sympathize or be on like understand why Tony's trying to kill Bucky. But at the same time, oh yes, we do get a mid-credit scene. Yes. T'Challa takes Bucky to Wakanda to heal up and figure out what's going on with his mind. And he gets put back into cryo sleep, and basically T'Challa's like, Bucky and my father, they were both victims of Hydra, both victims of terrible things happening to them. But Bucky's going to be here to recover, to learn, to figure himself out. And I think he's kind of doing it because he tried to kill Bucky. And this is kind of like a, sorry, I tried to kill you, you know, kind of a thing. But anyways, yeah, I completely understand why Tony is trying to kill Bucky. But at the same time, he was mind controlled. He didn't have the choice to live his own life. And when he did get to live his own life, he was also like, I don't know, he wasn't really doing anything, but he was trying to be peaceful, right? It's such a tricky situation because I understand why he's doing it, but it doesn't change anything. He's not doing anything. He's not avenging. Well, he's avenging his parents, I guess, but for what? It's over. It's not going to give him the time back. It's not going to be able to change the last things he said to his parents, to his mom, or to his dad. It's not going to give him the opportunity to live a life with them. And then, let's say he does kill Bucky. What does that mean with Cap? You know? It's not going to... It ruins their relationship because he is still alive and he is still capable of good. And you think Cap would just stand there and let that happen? If it were my best friend and I knew he was alive and he had killed somebody, I wouldn't just stand by and let anybody, let alone Iron Man, you know what I mean, just come over and kill him because of something awful that he did that he had no control over, you know? And yes, they both fight him, they both beat him up, and you can call it them jumping him because he found out that his parents got killed or whatever, but I'm still sticking by the point. The point being is that Bucky is a victim just as much as Tony Stark's mom and dad were victims of Hydra. The only difference is that they forced Bucky to be the bullet. They forced him to be a weapon, a tool, to kill whoever they wanted. And Tony can't kill Hydra. There's no face of Hydra. There's nobody he can like attack or kill or defeat. There is only Bucky because he's on video seen killing them. And he's angry. He's upset. And I completely understand it. But killing him then and there, when he finally has control of himself, is finally able to hopefully have a way to not be this killing machine, to live a life of his own choosing. It just doesn't feel right for him to kill him, in my opinion. And that's why I'm Team Cap. Saving him was the right move. I think saving him was a good choice. Saving him, even though it is personal. It's personal for both of them. But you can't go back and stop Bucky. You know? But that's why I like that Bucky didn't die. That's why I like that Bucky was still left alive. Because even though he did kill his parents, you can't go back and bring him into this new life. You can only move forward. And keeping Bucky alive, moving forward with that, is way more... It is valuable, you know, in my opinion. But anyways, this movie, I could go on and on and on about this movie. I didn't even touch on every little single thing or deeper meaning or on a deeper level with everything. I just scratched the surface of how fantastic this movie is. But yeah, this is one of my favorite superhero movies, Marvel movies ever. And every time I rewatch it, I'm back in the movie theater again, experiencing it for the first time. It's just that's an experience. That's a huge deal. And that was in the thick of it. That was Marvel, like right peak Marvel for me. It was so amazing. It is like an Avengers 2.5, you know what I'm saying? Like having all of those characters together. I also think it was really cool not having Thor and Hulk in there, because having both of them there would kind of like be a little too overpowered, which I think is cool. It gives Thor and Hulk like a huge like, oh, they're too strong if they were on either side. Or, you know, it kind of makes them do their own thing or follow their own path, I guess. But anyways, I just really think that this is such an amazing movie, a great movie. It It did so much better than Batman versus Superman, I'll tell you that right now. It did so much better because it was personal. It had a really nice personal angle, better than Martha, why did you say that name? Like, it's just so much better in every way. And it didn't need to be this huge, colossal world threat like what they did with Batman versus Superman. They had like that huge monster at the end where they come together. And this one, it was just a man that caused all of this. So this movie is a product of everything that the MCU is building towards and has become. It's a product of the first Avengers film. It's a product of Avengers Age of Ultron, Winter Soldier, Lagos, everything. Everything built up and culminated into that moment, into that disagreement, into them being branded fugitives or criminals or vigilantes. It forced them apart. They couldn't work together because Tony signed the accords and Cap didn't. It butted heads against one another, and it forced them with the reality of what Bucky has done and what he has been forced to do. He got framed so everybody would look for Bucky, Everything just came together. It was all built up into this moment and this clash between heroes. And so, for all of those reasons, I'm still Team Cap. I have a great love for Iron Man, though. He's awesome. It's just, you hate to see him on the other side of things, where it's like making bad choices or acting on emotional things, not for the right way, the right thing, But anyways, Captain America Civil War is without a doubt a top tier movie. I'm going to rank all these movies eventually, but yeah, it's a top tier movie. So anyways, guys, thank you guys so much for listening. I'll talk to you guys all next time. Thank you.